Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Whole Elephant. So glad you're here. Today we're doing a little bit of a blast from the past. You know, when we talk about deconstructing, a lot of times that is from theologies that have been hurtful. And there's a lot of trauma and a lot of pain behind deconstructing, and that definitely exists. There's another part of deconstructing that I think is just natural. That didn't necessarily cause pain or harm. You're just learning from somebody who doesn't know all the answers, just like you're not going to know all the answers. And so today, blast from the past, I thought it would be fun in my own journey to take a look back at one of those people that taught me when I was younger. Brock Morgan is an author. He's been in youth ministry for about 25 years now, and he was my junior high youth pastor. And I thought it'd be cool to talk to him, reminisce about old times, and talk about what he taught me. And are there things that he taught me that he doesn't even believe anymore? I thought it would be kind of fun to go back in the past and take it from that angle, because we all need to deconstruct. We all need to think about the things we learned when we were younger and how we're going to move forward. So I hope you have a great day today, and I hope you enjoy this chat. Hey, Brock. How's it going, man?
Dude, so good.
We're
so
here.
Awesome.
It's been a
I
long
can't believe
time.
I know.
First of all, what kind of youth pastor are you, man? 9 a.m. on a Monday? That's when you wanted to do this? What youth pastor schedules something for 9 a.m. on a Monday?
Well, today's my day off.
Yeah, me too.
You know, and I'm one of those weirdo morning people.
Oh, okay. Have you always been a morning person?
I've always been a morning person.
All right. Well, hopefully I'm awake enough to do this morning.
Yeah. Well, you're a musician, so you normally don't start thinking until afternoon. So
that's true.
I get it, man. This is tough stuff, but
well, it's good to see you, man. You're in Chino now? Is that where you are?
Yeah, I'm in Chino,
California.
So not far from you. If you're heading to San Clemente, you go right through Chino, and we could go for a surf.
Totally. You've lived all across the country in the last 25 years of your career. By the way, you just celebrated 25 years in ministry. Is that right? 25?
Well, I was 25 years of marriage, and I've been in ministry, if you include non-full-time work, 29 years. So I was in ministry, all through college. So 29 years, but it's actually been 26 years in ministry.
But how many places have you lived in those 29 years?
So we got married and we were in Glendale. Then we moved to Washington, D.C. Then we moved to Long Beach, San Diego, Sacramento, Salem, Oregon, Greenwich, Connecticut, Washington, D.C. again. It's good enough to go there twice.
Yeah.
And then back to L.A. here in Chino. So nine moves, which I'm exhausted. My wife especially is exhausted. And yeah.
You're like an NBA journeyman.
A lot of youth pastors bop around, and it is rough. It's a rough deal. Sometimes you leave because you're just maybe there's unhealth in your own life or whatever, or you're not willing to stay and work things out. Sometimes people leave because there's abuse and you got to get out of there. Or sometimes there's just a lack of support for youth ministry. But I've had in the moves, I've had good transitions out, and I've had tragic. I can't believe I'm still going back to work in the church after that kind of pain stuff. So I've had a couple of those, and that caused me to bop around a little bit because I started a couple nonprofits, in those moves. And then, like I did that in 2008. And what happened? The economy, it was really not easy to raise money. So then I was like, oh crap, I guess I got to go get another job. So, I mean, there's also financial reasons for
Sure.
job moves.
Sure.
I was laid off at a church because of the economy, so, these things happen.
Yeah, for sure. I've had the exact opposite experience. I've been at this church for 15 years.
I
It's
know, dude.
crazy.
I
It's so
love that.
rare.
And I'm always jealous. It is rare. And I wish that has been my story. But in some sense, there's been some beautiful blessings along the way. In other sense, there's been, it's been exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think our whole situation here is where our head pastor's been here for 33 years. The only full-time job he's ever had is at this church. And I've been here 15, and I'm not even the longest tenured person into the support
Yeah,
staff.
that's awesome.
So
That's
it's
awesome.
very rare. Take me back 25 years ago. I was a student in your junior high group. Your first full-time job.
Man.
I was really
My
your first full-time student.
job.
I
Yep.
still remember when you came to interview for the job and stayed at my house while you were interviewing.
Yeah, man.
I still remember that very well. What do you
Dude, it was
remember
awesome.
about those early years?
Oh man, I was in heaven. I was just married. We got married, and 2 weeks later, we were living in Southern California, starting our first full-time ministry together as a couple. And I felt there was just so much, everything was so new, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just knew I loved Jesus and I loved kids, and let's go, man, let's go. And I came into a situation where there wasn't much of a junior high program.
Mm-hmm.
And I had big dreams to reach a city. And so we just went after it. And but I just remember easy bonds with you guys. Like there was a quick affection, chemistry between us and these 7th and 8th graders. And it was man, I learned so much. I've had people visit me from that youth group, and they would tell stories of things that we did, and I would be like, I can't believe we did that. I'm so glad no one died. I'm so glad, like
yeah. Well, I mean,
absolutely insane.
When I started here at the church, I started as the high school pastor, and all I knew is what I had grown up with. And so
we're back.
Eric?
There we go. Did I lose you?
Somehow I lost you. I don't know what happened.
I don't know, but it seems like we're still recording. So,
all right, we'll keep going.
Yeah. So when I started here 15 years ago, I started as the high school pastor.
Okay.
And I remember going, all right, like I gotta plan some games. I gotta plan some activities. What did we used to do? Like, I don't think I can do that anymore.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure
I know, right?
We should have all been arrested at the Glendale Galleria at one point or another, playing mall tag, doing crazy
Dude,
stuff.
Mall tag. I'm 25 years old, diving in a rack full of clothes in Nordstrom when security is grabbing me by the arm and escorting me out.
Right. Meanwhile, the rest of your junior hires are running around 2x2 around the mall with no supervision. It was perfect.
Yes. Oh my gosh, mall tag is the best. Oh my goodness. Yeah, your mom, one time, we're on our way to Bing Crosby's estate. Your grandparents own the house for a 8th grade retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And Rudy, buddy of mine, who's interning for me, he and I are in the 15-passenger vans driving, full of kids, and we start racing each other, weaving in and out of traffic. And he's trying to get in front of me. I'm trying to get in front of him. And your mom comes flying up on our left side and points, pull over. Both of you pull over. We pull the vans over. We're on the side of the freeway. And she says, if you guys keep doing this, I'm calling the trip and it's going to be over. And we're going to go home and we're going to end this thing. But you're not driving like that with these kids in the van. And we stood there, these two grown adults, like, sorry, Karen. She let us have it. And we needed it because we were so stupid. Yeah. Oh my gosh. All kinds of stupid. I was kind of growing up as, you just kind of, you grow up when you, especially in youth ministry, you start off and you really should not be, you probably shouldn't be doing it yet, but they just throw you in and all right, make it happen. And you just kind of live and learn. And those who stay in youth ministry, they do the learning, they figure it out. And hopefully I figured some of this out.
Right. No, I mean, when I started fresh out of college with high school kids, I sat there one day and it dawned on me, I'm only like 5 years older than these guys.
I know, right?
You know what? How am I in charge? Right. And I don't think I should be in charge. Mm-hmm. What did you learn? What do you remember about those early days, lessons you learned that you carry with you today?
Well, I think that, the essence of ministry is creating environments where people can experience the warmth of God. And I slowly learned how every environment that you're in, whether you're in that 15-passenger van or playing a game or giving a message or leading worship, you're creating environments. You're setting the table so God can do what he does best, which is transform lives. And so I learned everything I do there has to be a why behind it. Why are we doing this? And to be reminded of what we do and be so intentional and thoughtful, because kids are busy and we don't want to waste anyone's time. And I want every second to count. And so for me, it's, I learned how to be super thoughtful with every single action, every word I say, everything we do, how we lead, how we laugh together. All of this is pointing kids towards Jesus and setting them up to experience God's Spirit in a way that is transformational.
Yeah. I would imagine over the years you've had, lots of kids that you would consider a success story, a lot of failures. And it dawned on me real fast that I can't control the outcomes of ministry. I can only like you said, I can only set the table for Jesus, for the Holy Spirit to do that. Is that something you had to learn along the way? Have you had kids that just, it breaks your heart that what you're doing is not working?
Oh, sure. The great percentages of kids in the church end up walking away from faith, especially from church. And I've learned to really trust God in their story. I think early on I had a Jesus complex and I felt like I needed to save every kid. And that wasn't healthy it was bad theology, and it wasn't healthy for my marriage. It wasn't healthy for our ministry in general. For me as a person, I was carrying the weight of every kid's story. And it's easy to get that Jesus complex as a minister. And for me, I needed to know that these stories aren't over. These kids' stories who are now maybe even in their 40s, when that's crazy to think. They have their own children and their stories aren't over. Their stories are not over. And I can trust that the seeds that were planted will reap a harvest. Something will happen, and I trust God in that. And so for me, I've moved away from, now it doesn't mean that I don't, when I hear of a kid in a youth group that I was leading that's walked away from the Lord, my heart aches. But and I might even reach out, because I'm creating an environment. Maybe it's an environment on a phone call, but reminding them in the midst of all these questions, there's something so unique about Jesus, and remind them of what they had experienced and what they believed. And so for me, the stories of these kids they're not over. And and so I really trust God, and I also believe wholeheartedly that God is really good. He is so good, and I trust Him. And so I mean, that's part of ministry, is the success stories in the midst of failure stories.
Yeah. How has ministry changed over the last 25 years?
Dude, a lot. So
I purposely left that open-ended so that you can go any direction you want.
I mean, when I first started in ministry, if we got a Nintendo 64 in the youth room and pizza, there'd be hundreds of kids.
Or started a basketball league.
Or a basketball league, hundreds of kids. Glendale was almost easy. Yeah. Like when we started, there was maybe 10 kids in the youth group.
Yeah.
Maybe. And within 6 months, there were hundreds, and all of a sudden, we're running these fifth quarters for junior high, which they had not done. We have a basketball program that's exploding. The after school boxing program was legit. Yeah. And all these kids were ministering to all these kids, and it almost was easy. And they're coming to us. We're not even like, we are going to hang out at campuses, but then they're coming to us. It was easy.
Right.
But so much in culture has changed. It used to be that kind of the Young Life model, a lot of laughter and fun and a little Jesus would reach kids. And I have found that in order to reach today's generation, deeper is better. Embracing intellectualism, embracing the Holy Spirit, not shying away from these things actually is what wins kids, not shallow entry-level Christianity. And so I found, I'll give you an example. I just started in our church here. This is kind of a startup, the church I'm at, which I've always wanted to come in and build a church.
Yeah.
And so we just had our grand opening, and, I started with basically not a youth group. And I just started gathering a few kids, and over the last couple months, it's growing. And I'm taking this kid home a couple weeks ago, and he's like, Brock, I used to go to, I'll just go ahead and say, I used to go to Young Life, and it's like, it just fizzled out. I didn't want to go anymore. I love coming to our youth group because you actually are teaching us stuff.
Yeah.
You're actually giving us something that we can use. And then he actually starts crying in this car. I've never experienced this kind of stuff before, Brock. And he couldn't quite verbalize what he was feeling or thinking. And I just sat there going, you know what? This is it. Deeper is better. Deeper ministry. You've got to bring depth to students, because a click of the button, they have information. They don't need your all your funny stories and a little Jesus. They want the real thing, and they're dying for a life worth living. And so another aspect that I found was that kids look at the world today. Eric, when you were a kid, you would look at the world and it was enticing. Like you would go, the Jesus way or the world way. And most of your generation, it was not an easy pick. Like, actually, this over here seems to work.
Right.
Kids today go, the world's not working. Like, this isn't working. I don't know if Jesus is the way, but I know this other thing. that my older brothers and sisters or my parents or like, this isn't working.
Yeah.
And so it's the first time I've ever, I'll speak around the country at camps. I'll be in front of 10,000 teenagers at some events. And I feel like everyone in the room is like, yeah, we know the way the world's going ain't working. It used to not be like that. It used to be like, no, I like the way I'm going. Maybe when I'm older, I'll follow Jesus, but this way over here is way better. And you have there's hints of that. But when you get below the surface of that to the reality, they're like, actually, I'm miserable. All my friends are miserable. I don't feel safe anywhere. This isn't working. And so you see an openness to the gospel that, like, I've never felt more hopeful. This is why I've stayed in ministry, because I've stayed in it and the years have gone by, I've become a little more hopeful each year. And I just can't get out of it. We've had opportunities to go plant a church, to be a teaching pastor somewhere, and God hasn't released me. And so I get paid less than probably what I could have, and less notoriety. I don't care. I can't let go of this next generation, because I see them so open like never before.
Right. Do you find that kids are growing up faster than my generation? I mean, I just taking the election that just happened, our junior high and high school guys here are having to walk kids through the angst and all this stuff that is around things like the election. Sexually, it seems like they're growing up faster, all these different ways. I didn't give two craps who the president was when I was in junior high. But it feels like they're having to deal with things at a younger level. Do you sense that?
I sense two things happening simultaneously. I sense them experiencing things, being a part of things, seeing things that are beyond their years. And I also see those very things stunting their growth. So, kids will enter 6th grade already addicted to porn. And this is not unusual. 80% of 5th graders, while doing homework, will accidentally stumble into pornography. And if you have a past history with pornography, you know that the first time you see it, your body immediately reacts. This is how God made us. Sexy things are sexy. And there is a reaction, and kids get hooked. And so I have found that kids are coming into our groups with addictions and brokenness and hurt, and that other previous generations had not experienced, and their parents are clueless. Little Tommy would never look at that stuff, or whatever it is, in the naivety and the lack of, it's like what Chap talks about with full-on systemic abandonment of our kids. So I see kids, yes, they are experiencing things, seeing things, being a part of things, caring about things that they used to not care about. Justice. These are good things, by the way. Justice, who the president is. They're really caring about these things. And at the same time, a 15-year-old today is not a 15-year-old 20 years ago. A 15-year-old, you feel like you're still 20 years ago doing preventative ministry. And today with a 15-year-old, you're doing healing ministry.
Right. No, I don't know how I would have turned out if I had a cell phone when I was in junior high and high school.
Dude, I mean, big problems.
And I mean, pornography, obviously, I'm sure that's 95% of your job is just trying to get kids not look at porn on their phones, but also just the texting, social media, the constant judgment, the constant interactions, all that stuff. I went to school and then I hung out with my friends on Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings, and that was it. And there was a break, there was a release, and just that constant connection. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
Oh, it's a bad thing. You'll have, since 2011, suicide rates among teenage girls has gone up 72%.
Wow.
It's gone up 45% among teenage boys. Among preteen girls, suicide attempts have gone up 151% since 2011. So, when you hear stats like that, you're like, okay, what happened in 2010? And what happened in 2010 is 5 million kids got a smartphone. 5 million more teens got a smartphone than ever before. And I mean, it's a direct correlation to the constant stimulus of social media. And it's insane the impact that it's having. We were so slow with our daughter she had a flip phone forever. And so she didn't grow up with this phone in her hand. She could care less.
Right.
She didn't have social media forever. And she's in the public school. She's an awesome kid, super active, but she just wasn't. Her cell phone was not on her constantly. To this day, I'm like, Danson, can you please return a text? Like, look at your phone once in a while. Oh my gosh.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, my daughter is 6, and we're already experiencing those things with tablets and phones. It's crazy. I mean, you put a kids show on YouTube, and 20 minutes later, you could be down a very dark path if you're not watching what she's clicking. And
totally,
that's scary stuff.
Yeah, we have a filter on all our devices. Crap, I'm forgetting what it's called, but it allows you to go anywhere you want to go, but it just lets someone know where you've been. And so there's this, it's Covenant Eyes.
Okay.
And so I have it on my cell phone, my tablets, my laptop. My wife has it. Our daughter. We just like, we're going to do this as a family, not because we don't trust each other, but because we love each other.
Yeah.
And it does stink. You'll put a filter on, and all of a sudden you can't do your homework or whatever because you can't Google for your biology class or something.
Yeah.
But this allows you to go wherever you want to go. But we know, and so.
Well, I remember the first time my mom put a filter on our home computer when I was in high school. And it was right around when I was learning how to play guitar and stuff like that. And I really wanted to learn this Bare Naked Ladies song, but I couldn't.
Yeah. Kelsey wanted, my wife wanted to, I was like, Kelsey, look up Christian bands. I want to bring a band into our youth group. So she typed in hardcore music. And this is on my church office's computer. All of this horrible stuff comes up. She's like, no. Anyway, unbelievable.
That's awesome. Talk to me about your your personal theology over the last 25 years. I'm really interested to know, are there things that you taught me 25 years ago that you don't teach anymore or don't believe anymore?
Ooh, Eric. Yes, I evolved, and I think I kind of, when I was 7th and 8th graders, I was kind of I wasn't teaching much controversy.
Sure.
I wasn't getting into premillennialism or amillennialism, or I wasn't getting it. But I think that my personal theology has broadened. And, what's funny is when I went to a dispensational college, I went to a dispensational seminary, which dispensational theology is one of the things is that women shouldn't be pastors.
Mm-hmm.
So my first job is at Glendale Pres, where there are female pastors.
Mm-hmm.
And I was schooled in women should, not be in that role. And
right.
So I remember I never told anyone, I never taught about women in ministry or anything, but somehow the word got out. And so the women pastors at Glendale Pres were having me do these readings. Brock, we want you to read about this stuff. And I remember being like, yeah, no, I'm not seeing it. And then a couple of years later, I read Scott McKnight's book called Blue Parakeet. And that book, so like my understanding of empowering and seeing women in leadership and in the pulpit and teaching, that changed drastically. And I don't know that you would have noticed that as a 7th and 8th grader, but I've noticed it in my own theology and how I view women, and how I'm so pumped about my wife just a month ago graduating with her MDiv. And, so my theology has moved in a lot of ways. I'm much less sure about hell than I used to be, and softer. And
you're going the Rob Bell way.
I think I might be going the C.S. Lewis way and the N.T. Wright way. And I believe in hell. I haven't been able to get away from that, but I so believe in the goodness of God. And I read a book by N.T. Wright called Surprised by Hope. And he has a chapter in there on hell that really set me free from teaching from a position of fear, scaring people into the kingdom. And to be honest, I never started following Jesus because I was afraid of him. I started following Jesus because I was overwhelmed by how much he absolutely loved me. And his love won me over. And so even how I have seen softened in some of those things, I think has really helped me in my own relationship, in my own trust of God. Those are a couple of things. I am I'm definitely not I used to believe in the rapture and those things. I've moved away from that. And I believe that when Jesus returns, he will make all things new, and he will bring his kingdom here, and he'll set all things right. And I can't wait. I used to fear Jesus returning. Now I'm like, dude, come anytime now. Like, we're ready. We need it. So please come and make all things right again, and bring heaven to earth. And so those are some things that have changed in my theology.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, the hell one is hard, right? I mean,
it's hard.
And
I think I've just become more humble. And less sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, a couple things. If it does exist, I can't imagine an end time where every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. And then right after that, he parcels us out and some of us go to one place. And I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. And just, how random and crappy this world is. I can't fathom someone being held accountable to everything that happens on this world. The way our brains are wired, I can't find a situation where I would say, I think God's grace ends before this person.
Right.
There wouldn't be a grace. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. When I start getting confused, and again, I allow this topic, I allow myself to live in the area of mystery. And so I'm not super sure about this stuff. Anyone who talks like they're sure about hell, they're probably leading a cult. Avoid them. For me, I'm just super humble, and I've reminded myself, God is like Jesus. I have to filter everything through Jesus. And so when I start being like, oh no, or someone teaches something, I'm like, oh man, that's awful. Or I read a passage and I'm like, wait, where does that fit into the narrative? And I have to do all that work, but I have to remind myself, oh yeah, God is like Jesus.
Yeah.
Who is Jesus? And I go to the Gospels and I'm reminded, okay, I can trust him regardless of how this thing plays out when every knee is bowing and every tongue is confessing that he is Lord. I know in that moment, he is so good. I can trust him.
Right. Right.
So I can trust him with my aunt who is gay, and her wife, Nora. We went to their wedding, and we just decided to love them. And a couple years later, she came to my birthday party, and I'm getting ready to blow out the candles, and she stops everyone. My house is full of friends, full of people from our church. And she stops it. Here's this amazing lesbian woman who looks like she is a lesbian woman. You know, she's this jock coach, amazing athlete. And she stops everyone. She goes, wait a second. And she starts crying. And she's like, the way Brock, Danson, and Kelsey have loved Nora and I just want everyone to know here, we are for the first time in like open to Jesus. Like,
Yeah.
and so for me, it's like I can trust God with her.
Right.
And I know that it wasn't me. It actually was his spirit, God's spirit working in them. So he has a plan already for them. That was not in vain. And their story is not over. And so these things that start to make me go, wait a second, when Christ returns, we shouldn't be talking about hell. You and I are both going to get fired. But when Christ returns and I'm standing next to my Aunt Connie, I trust him with her.
Yeah.
And the idea of me experiencing bliss in paradise and her being tortured for eternity down the road in hell.
Yeah.
I think paradise ceases to be paradise in that moment. And so I'm going to trust him, and I trust him.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting story because my uncle who's gay, my uncle Chris and his husband David, and they have a beautiful adopted son. That was a big part of my, a cliche word, but my deconstruction, of going, and not even that, just, atheist friends, humanist friends, just going, I have to apply these things I believe to real life living human beings now. And it gets really sticky and it gets really hard when you have to actually apply it. It's fine when you're just thinking about it in your head. It's fine when you're in a church where everyone believes the same thing. But when you have to start applying those to real life human beings, it becomes very difficult.
Yeah, when you're sitting in front of someone and this is a real person, it gets really sticky. So like your theology being played out better work for the person sitting across the table from you in that moment. And the good news must stay good news. I just think the good news is better news than we ever dreamed of. And that doesn't mean that I have to I have to have a poor theology of hell or no understanding of hell. And again, for the listener, reading N.T. Wright's book, Surprised by Hope, might help you because he offers a third way, a third perspective. And a lot of times people say there's two sides of the story, but typically there's three. You got my side, your side, and then the truth. And he offers this third way that made me not so afraid and helped me to really trust God in the mystery of this concept hell.
Yeah. I want to get into Christianity as a whole. Actually, maybe just Christianity in America. Where do you see the state of Christianity in America right now? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What is your overall consensus on Christianity in America?
I have very mixed feelings about American Christianity. I tend to look to England and places like that. In 1955, C.S. Lewis said, maybe it was 1950, C.S. Lewis said that they were already living in a post-Christian world, 1950s in England at that time. And so the church there figured out the culture had already swung. And so they had to figure out how to navigate and live in a world that was no longer sympathetic to their faith.
Yeah.
In America, post-Christianity now is emerging. We are this far behind them. And what you see how you see the American church responding, we're in that angst period where we're fighting it and we're duking it out and we're trying to not let go of this culture that we have owned. Where we have been the primary shaper of culture and thought. And that has changed the last 20 plus years. But
changed why? Do you think we were not good stewards of it?
I think that, if you go back to when, in the late 70s and early 80s, when the American church, the U.S. church, made a deal with the Republican Party, that changed things significantly for us. And so if you were to ask my kids in our youth group about Christianity, they would almost view it as something political or anti-something, anti-gay, anti-immigrant. They would see it through this political lens. There's been a lot of problems with that late 70s, early 80s alliance. My grandfather was a Democrat. So this is pre 1980, and when Reagan cut a deal, that really it's amazing. He runs against Jimmy Carter, who is a Southern Baptist Sunday school teacher, and the American church votes for the divorced Ronald Reagan. And so something significant happened there. And I think that we are feeling to this day, really, we're having a huge impact. And then with 2020, what's happening with COVID and the civil unrest and how certain churches, there's such a divide within the U.S. church as to how to even respond to what's going on in the world. And when you live in a post-Christian culture, Jesus unifies you. All this other stuff kind of goes to the wayside. When you're in England in 1990 and Christianity has been dismissed to the point where people don't even have an opinion anymore about Christianity. The Christians really came together around, let's just focus on Jesus, not all of our differences. And they literally, a revival is happening over there right now. Like my youth pastor friends are like 1,000 kids got saved last night. Like they're just, it's insane what's happening over there. And we are dividing over all these little minor things in the grand scheme of things. And I think that I have hope again. I wrote a book called Youth Ministry 2027. And I was a publisher came to me and they said, you wrote a youth ministry in a post-Christian world. We want you to write another youth ministry book. And I was like, all right, I got nothing though. Like I've said everything there is to say in that youth ministry book. And they're like, well, what if we brainstormed 5 ideas and then came back to you? So the publishing company brainstorms, they give me 5 ideas. I hate every single idea they've given. Like, I'm like, I can't write, like, no, I don't want to write a whole book about these things. So I'm like, all right, let me have a week in all. Let me just think about this. So I'm thinking, and I remembered a conversation a year earlier. I was in London at a church called Holy Trinity Brompton. Have you heard of HTB?
No.
It's an amazing church. Oh, and they're the Alpha Church. They started the Alpha course, if you've heard of Alpha.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Tim Hughes is the worship leader there.
Yeah.
And so I'm hanging out and I'm having breakfast with their youth pastor, who is also kind of he's a writer, author. He's a futurist. He can kind of see coming trends. And I mean that in a non-spiritual way, like he sees cultural trends and writes about it.
Thank you for calling it a futurist and not a prophet. That made my heart very warm right now.
And so he's like, Brock, by 2027, in the US, there's going to be a revival. Like, it's starting now. In 10 years, it's happening now here in London. In 10 years, it's going to happen in the US. And so I was like, that was ringing in my ears. I was like, I can be a youth pastor through 2027. I don't want to miss this. And so I'm thinking about this book that I want to write, and I'm thinking about this culture. And at that time, this is like 2017. I'm like 2018. I'm like, I've been calling this generation of kids kind of the Thomas generation. They're quick to doubt. They look at the American church and they're like, yeah, that's not it. They're quick to doubt Jesus, Christianity, but they have a tender heart like Thomas, and they just want to know for themselves the truth.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, wouldn't it be cool if somewhere in the Gospels, chapter 20, verse 27, Thomas moves from doubt to faith. So I open the Bible to John 20, 27. And the John 20, 27 is Jesus looking at Thomas, and he says, Thomas, leave your doubt and believe. Put your hands in the holes of my hands, my side. And Thomas falls to his knees and says, my Lord and my God. And I go, oh my gosh, I have a book. How do we move? How do we move kids from doubt to faith and into a movement? And that's what Youth Ministry 2027 is about. And I see what's happening in the world, and it feels so chaotic and out of control. And the church seems to be responding in some good ways, in some awful ways, depending on the church you go to. But this next generation, I believe, is ready to move, to leave their doubt and believe, but they want to join a movement, not a political movement, not just a say no to certain thing movement, but a Jesus movement. And I'm pumped about it.
Yeah.
So that's what I feel like my role is to instigate. I'm wanting to be an instigator of some of this stuff.
Yeah. It's been amazing to see what we're willing to sacrifice for political control when we believe in a man and in an early church who sought none of that.
Yeah.
I mean, my go-to is Paul is writing all these letters from prison to churches, and not in none of the letters does he say, hey, can you come get me out of prison? Like that wasn't the point. The point wasn't to change the politics. The point was to change hearts and lives. And I think it has to be fear-based, right? We fear losing that control. So we'll do whatever we need to do to get the right judges in place, to get the right policies in place. And it's disastrous. It's disastrous to younger generations looking at it, because it's obviously very hypocritical in a lot of senses. And it's disastrous for people outside of the church. They look at it and go, yep, well, that's why I don't do that. It's just been really interesting.
And it's amazing because they eventually won Rome. They did the impossible. So the way they lived out the gospel, initially they're getting killed by the thousands, fed to lions. You know, they're hanging on crosses and lit on fire to provide light in the streets of Rome at night. Right. You know, and you go 100 years later, 200 years later, And now the majority of the people there are Rome. And you can talk kind of historically what happened there, but literally they won. Eventually they lost, but they won. Jesus broke through. The way they were living, the way of Jesus was so convincing. The seeking of not power, but living a life of the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness. There's a word called forbearance that literally means tolerance and self-control. And they lived this out. God empowered them through his Spirit to live in such a way that it just was like, oh my gosh, that way seems to work.
Yeah.
And it does.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you doing this, man. It's so fun to catch up with you, to have a chat. Now that you're in Southern California, once COVID's over, we're gonna have to get together and actually, give each other a bro hug and have a face-to-face. That would be really fun.
Definitely, dude. I love you. I'm so proud of you. This is such an honor to be talking with you, dude. Like, Eric, you're like the first kid I met in Glendale 25 years ago. And I'm just so proud of you. And man, this has been a thrill.
Well, I wouldn't be here if not for you. And then Chuck Hunt taking over in high school. You guys set a trajectory for my life when I was in junior high. It's true. There's no way around it. The ministry you did, the way you loved me, all that set something in motion. So I couldn't be more thankful.
Well, you're awesome. Tell Edgar hello for me.
I will. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate you.